There are players who arrive with fireworks. And then there are players who arrive with a warning. Ritsu Doan is the second kind. Because when he gets the ball on that right side, when a defender gives him just half a second, when the crowd thinks the danger is still building, it's already too late. Germany learned it. Spain learned it. Bundesliga defenders keep learning it. And now, on the biggest stage again, this kid from Japan is making the game look like it's moving in slow motion for everyone except him. That's what makes this story so dangerous. Because Ritsu Doan was never supposed to become one of those players. Not in the global football conversation. Not in the Ballon d'Or debates. Not in the same breath as the superstars from Brazil, Argentina, France, or Portugal. He came from a football nation the world still loved to underestimate. He came without the giant hype machine. He came without the luxury of being expected to dominate. And somehow, that became his greatest weapon. The world kept looking past him. He kept making the world regret it. And the craziest part? The moments most players spend their whole careers dreaming about. Ritsu Doan seems to save those for the exact second nobody believes in him. That's the real story here. Not just goals. Not just highlights. Not just another winger cutting inside and shooting. This is the story of a player who built his identity around one brutal truth. If you underestimate him, he will punish you in front of the entire world. And trust me, we're going to get to the moment that changed everything. But first, you need to understand why Ritsu Doan hits so differently. Because when people talk about the biggest football heroes, they usually start with the obvious. The chosen one. The wonder kid. The boy who was always destined for greatness. The cameras find him early. The headlines carry him. The world prepares itself for his arrival. Ritsu Doan was never that guy. He wasn't handed the red carpet. He had to create his own entrance. That's why his story feels less like a football biography and more like a sports movie. The hero nobody fully trusted. The villain? Being overlooked. Not once. Not twice. Over and over again. Overlooked because he was from Japan. Overlooked because he was not the tallest. Overlooked because he wasn't playing for one of Europe's most glamorous clubs. Overlooked because bigger names always swallowed the spotlight before the game had even started. And every time that happened, Ritsu Doan seemed to grow sharper, colder, meaner in front of goal. That's not normal. Most players need belief before they explode. Doan seems to explode because belief is missing. And that mentality didn't appear overnight. Long before the World Cup goals, before the Bundesliga nights, before defenders started backing away in panic, there was a kid in Amagasaki, Hyogo, chasing a ball with the kind of obsession that usually ends one of two ways. Either the dream breaks early, or it becomes impossible to stop. Doan chose the second path. He started young. Really young. The kind of kid who wasn't just playing football, but living inside it. Every touch mattered. Every street game mattered. Every training session was a stage. He came through youth football in Japan with technical quality that was impossible to ignore, moving through Urike's FC Amagasaki, Nishinomiya Soccer School, and then into the Gamba Osaka system. That part sounds simple now. It never is. Because talent at that age is cheap. Promise is everywhere. The world is full of brilliant kids who vanish. What separates the few who survive is not just technique. It's obsession. It's that refusal to be ordinary. It's the ability to carry hunger into rooms where nobody is offering comfort. And even as a teenager, Doan had that feeling around him. Not the feeling of a polished superstar. The feeling of a player trying to prove something every single day. And then came the first giant leap. Europe. For a lot of young players, that word sounds glamorous. In reality, it can be brutal. New country. New language. New football culture. New pressure. No safety net. One bad stretch and suddenly the wonder fades, the club moves on, and the dream starts looking smaller than it did back home. Doan went anyway. Because that's what ambitious players do. They walk into uncertainty and dare it to beat them. He left Gamba Osaka and moved to Groningen in the Netherlands as a teenager. That alone tells you something about him. He didn't wait for the perfect moment. He didn't need everyone's permission. He went abroad at 19 and stepped into a completely different world. Different speed. Different physicality. Different expectations. And here's where it gets interesting. He didn't just survive there. He announced himself. That's when people started noticing the details. The left foot. The balance. The low center of gravity. The confidence to attack defenders one-on-one. The way he shaped his body before shooting, like he already knew where the ball was going before the goalkeeper had even set his feet. He wasn't just flashy. He was efficient. And that's scarier. But then something happened. The rise stalled. And this is the part casual fans miss when they look back at a player's career like it was one smooth climb. It wasn't. Not even close. After Groningen came PSV. Bigger club. Bigger pressure. Bigger spotlight. On paper, it looked like the next perfect step. In reality, it became a test. Because that is where careers can bend. A young player arrives at a strong club, the rhythm changes, the competition gets sharper, the trust is harder to earn, and suddenly the game that once felt natural starts feeling heavy. That's exactly where a lot of talented players disappear. Not because they aren't good enough. Because football is merciless when momentum leaves you. And for Doan, the easy story would have been decline. A talented winger. Good prospect. Nice left foot. Couldn't quite make the leap. We've heard that story 1,000 times. But Ritsu Doan refused to become that story. That's when his journey took a turn that tells you everything about his character. He went on loan to Arminia Bielefeld in Germany. Not a glamorous rescue. Not a fairy tale destination. Just another fight. Another place to prove he belonged. Another room where he had to earn respect. And this is where the movie version of Ritsu Doan really begins. Because some players need comfort to shine. Doan needs friction. In Germany, he started rebuilding. Not the reputation. Himself. The edges in his game grew tougher. The running got harder. The decisions got cleaner. The confidence returned, but this time it was different. Less youthful excitement. More steel. More purpose. He wasn't trying to show the world he had talent anymore. He was trying to show the world he could survive anything. That mindset is everything. It's the difference between a prospect and a weapon. And when he returned to PSV, the player who came back wasn't the same one who had struggled before. He was stronger. More dangerous. More direct. He finished that season with real production, and suddenly the trajectory was alive again. Not just alive. Accelerating. Then Freiburg made their move. Now here's where the underrated part becomes impossible to ignore. Because while the football world was busy drooling over the loudest young stars, Freiburg saw something colder. Something more reliable. A player who could create, score, work, adapt, and rise inside serious games. Not just a highlight player. A pressure player. And that was massive. Because some footballers look incredible when the stakes are low. Ritsu Doan started building a reputation for showing up when the air got heavy. At Freiburg, his game matured. He became more complete, more ruthless, more trustworthy. He didn't lose the flair. He sharpened it. He didn't lose the creativity. He added discipline to it. He learned when to slow the game, when to attack, when to crash into space, when to punish hesitation. He became the kind of player coaches trust and defenders hate. And then the world gave him the perfect stage. The 2022 World Cup. This is where the story turns from impressive to cinematic. Japan were drawn with Germany and Spain. Think about that for a second. Two former world champions. Two giants. Two countries loaded with pedigree, pressure, and history. Most people looked at that group and saw Japan as the side meant to make up the numbers. The respectable outsiders. The team that might compete, maybe surprise someone, but probably wouldn't truly shake the tournament. That was the mistake. And Ritsu Doan heard it. He later admitted he had listened to people in Germany talk as if beating Japan would be easy. Imagine that. You play in Germany. You hear the confidence. The dismissal. The casual disrespect. You smile on the outside. But inside? Inside you're storing every word. That kind of disrespect is dangerous when it reaches the wrong player. Because now it was personal. Now the villain had a face. Not one person. Not one coach. A whole football mindset. The idea that Japan could be admired, but not feared. The idea that a player like Ritsu Doan could be useful, but not decisive. The idea that the biggest moments belonged to bigger names. And then came Germany. The game itself felt familiar at first. A heavyweight dictating the script. Japan under pressure. Germany in front. The world nodding along, satisfied that reality had returned. That order had been restored. That the underdog had given it a nice try. And then the ball broke loose in the box. This is the moment you need to slow down. Because legends are built in seconds. The rebound falls. Chaos everywhere. Defenders reacting late. The goalkeeper exposed. And Ritsu Doan, the player people had overlooked, arrives exactly where history needs him. One swing. One finish. One explosion. 1-1. But don't rush past that. That was not just a goal. That was an answer. That was the fake smile disappearing. That was every dismissive comment catching fire in real time. That was Ritsu Doan looking at one of football's great nations and saying, "You should have taken us seriously." And the madness wasn't over. Japan won the game. They stunned Germany. The football world froze. The headlines changed. The laughter vanished. And right in the center of it was Doan, the so-called outsider, the supposed underdog, the player bigger reputations kept pushing to the side. But here's where it gets crazy. He wasn't done. Because if one World Cup goal against Germany was enough to make you remember his name, what happened next made it impossible to forget. Against Spain, another giant. Another world champion. Another match where Japan needed nerve, timing, and a player unafraid of the moment. Guess who answered again? Ritsu Doan. Another equalizer. Another jolt of life. Another reminder that this was not random. This was not luck. This was a pattern. The same player. The same stage. The same refusal to shrink when the giants stood in front of him. Germany and Spain. Let that sink in. Not a group stage against anonymous sides. Not stat padding in easy fixtures. 2 goals against 2 former world champions at the World Cup. 2 moments that helped Japan finish above both of them and top the group. That is not a good tournament. That is a national shockwave. And now let me put that into context. Most players spend their whole careers trying to create one truly immortal World Cup moment. Doan created 2 in the same group. That is the kind of thing that changes how a country remembers you. That is the kind of thing that makes even the icons of the game pay attention, because World Cups do not care about transfer fees, brand value, or pre-match narratives. On that stage, the only thing that matters is who dares to decide history. Messi knows it. Ronaldo knows it. Mbappe knows it. The legends are not remembered for being hyped. They are remembered for taking over moments everyone else was scared to touch. And Ritsu Doan touched them. That's why his rise feels so powerful. Because he didn't become a hero by following the expected script. He became a hero by breaking it. And if you think that made him satisfied, you haven't understood him yet. After the World Cup, he didn't act like a man who had completed the mission. He talked like a man who was still hungry. Still pushing. Still demanding more from himself. That says everything. Because some players hit the greatest moment of their lives and then spend years replaying it. Doan treated it like evidence. Evidence that he belonged. Evidence that the ceiling was higher than people thought. That attitude carried straight back into club football. At Freiburg, he kept growing. Kept producing. Kept becoming more complete. He turned into the kind of attacker who didn't just entertain, but delivered. Goals. Assists. Energy. Responsibility. He hit new levels in the Bundesliga, including his first double-digit league season, and suddenly the idea of Ritsu Doan as a nice little talent from Japan looked ridiculous. He wasn't a nice little talent. He was a serious player in a serious league. And serious clubs noticed. That's why the move to Eintracht Frankfurt mattered so much. Not just because it was another transfer. Because it felt like confirmation. Another step up. Another signal that his quality was now impossible to ignore. Frankfurt weren't buying a marketing story. They were buying proven Bundesliga quality. A winger with World Cup nerve. A player with speed, technique, and mindset. A player who had already shown he could handle the pressure of Europe and the weight of a nation. That is not hype. That is earned respect. And still, the same emotional truth follows him everywhere. People are late to believe. They see the size before they see the strength. They see the nationality before they see the danger. They see the quiet confidence before they realize it hides a killer instinct. And by the time they understand, he's already gone inside, already shaped to shoot, already celebrating in front of stunned defenders. That's why fans connect to him. Because Ritsu Doan feels like proof that football still has room for players who force the world to update its opinion. He is not the product of perfect marketing. He is the result of relentless growth. He is not the player everyone crowned too early. He is the player everyone kept catching up to. That creates emotion, especially in Japan. Because when a player like that scores against Germany and Spain, it's more than football. It becomes identity, belief. A whole country seeing one of its own stand on the biggest stage and refuse to bow. Those are the moments families remember together. The moments kids replay in the garden. The moments that tell a nation, we do belong here. And that emotional payoff is massive. Think about his family watching that. Think about the years of training. The early mornings. The sacrifices. The move abroad at 19. The difficult spell. The rebuilding. The doubt. And then the world sees him strike against giants like he was born for it. That's not just satisfying. That's cinematic. Even his own words after Germany told you what kind of competitor he is. He had heard the talk. He had swallowed it. He had smiled through it. And then he said the coolest thing he could do was shut them up by winning. That line says everything. Not complain. Not argue. Not beg for respect. That's a hero line. That's sports movie stuff. And now the future gets fascinating. Because Ritsu Doan is no longer the hidden threat. He is no longer the secret. He is entering the stage of his career where expectation follows him. Where defenders are ready. Where coaches know the danger. Where fans don't just hope for moments from him, they wait for them. That changes the challenge. Now it's not about surprising the world once. It's about staying there. About turning iconic moments into a lasting legacy. Can he become the symbol of Japan's next great leap? Can he help take them beyond the round of 16? Can he lead from the front in another World Cup and become one of the defining players in Japanese football history? Can he keep climbing in Europe until people stop calling him underrated and start calling him what he really is? Because that's the debate now. Not whether he belongs. Not whether he's good enough. Not whether the big stage is too much. We already know those answers. The real question is how far this story can go. How many more defenders can he embarrass? How many more giant teams can he punish? How many more moments can he steal before the football world finally learns the lesson it should have learned years ago? Never overlook Ritsu Doan. Because every great sports movie has that scene where the hero stops asking for permission and starts taking over the screen. For Japan, for Freiburg, for Frankfurt, for every fan who loves players with fire in their chest and revenge in their boots, that scene has already happened. And if this is only the middle of the story, then football has a problem. Because the kid they underestimated is still coming. And if he keeps writing chapters like this, one question is going to get louder and louder with every season, every big goal, every stunned defender, and every giant he drags to the floor. How high can Ritsu Doan really go?